I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
The Economist's editor-in-chief invited the world's richest man on and decided to put him on trial. Elon Musk walked in alone. No panel, no allies, just one interviewer with a prepared list of accusations. Far right, racist, anti-Muslim. Watch him refuse every single label and hand her 3 questions she cannot answer. Watch her reach for statistics the moment the argument gets uncomfortable. This isn't an interview. It's a cross-examination where the wrong person ends up defending themselves. Let's get into it.
Can we talk about Europe? A place that you are very, very focused on.
I'm not that focused on Europe.
I think judging by your posts, you're pretty concerned about Europe. You support...
I've once in a while I post something.
It's reasonably frequently. It's not once in a while, but because I'm genuinely interested in this. As someone who lives in Europe, lives in London, you paint a picture. Well, first of all, you support not just the populist right, but the far right. In fact, very fringe parties in some countries.
No, I support the normal people.
Okay.
What do you call the far right? Falsely.
You think is the normal person? Okay.
Yes. Literally, you could go back 10 or 15 years, and these policies were completely normal. In fact, one of the tricks that I think is funny. One of the things that's quite funny is to take a speech from Obama and Hillary, and then go to someone and say, who's sort of on the sort of what I call the lunatic left, and say, what do you think of the speech by Trump? I'm like, oh wow, he's the worst person ever. Actually, that was a speech by Obama. Or actually, that was a speech by Hillary.
I agree. No, I agree that the center of gravity in this country has shifted. Certainly, the Democratic Party shifted to the left. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people like Rupert Lowe. I'm talking about people.
It's actually just normal people. It's just normal people. It's just normal people. And and here are the principles. And tell me which of these sound terrible. That we should have secure borders. That we should have safe cities. That we should have sensible spending. Which of those 3 are far right fringe?
No,
and I would like to just admonish you and the media for the absurd characterization of the far right. It is false and misleading and nonsense. Please keep this part in.
She opens by labeling everyone he supports far right, then fringe, before he's said a word. He doesn't take it. 10 or 15 years ago, these were normal positions, and he proves the point with the Obama speech trick. Read Hillary's words aloud, call them Trump's, and watch the outrage arrive on cue. Then come the 3 principles. Secure borders, safe cities, sensible spending. She names Rupert Lowe instead of naming which one is extreme. That's not an answer.
Let me push back on that. Because
you have nonsense.
No, Elon, you have, close to 250 million followers on X.
Yeah, because
you say things like,
popular guy.
Quote, civil war in Britain is inevitable. Just a question of when.
On the current trend, yes.
I mean, when were you last in the UK?
A few years ago.
Exactly. So I live there. I'm there the whole time. That is nonsense.
You live a cloistered existence.
No, I don't, actually. And the numbers also disprove what you say.
What numbers?
All the numbers about crime. London is a much safer city than any city in the United States. Violent crime in the UK is not where you think it is. In fact, it's coming down. You have painted, and because you have so many followers, so many Americans believe it, a kind of view that Europe and the UK are kind of, overrun with terrifying Muslim immigrants. There's rape on every corner. There's a sort of civilizational destruction.
I haven't said any of those things.
Just not. Well, you said civil war in Britain is inevitable. And
yes, if current trends continue, it is.
There it is. She quotes the Civil War line, then asks when he was last in Britain. As if a travel date refutes an argument. He answers, and she declares it nonsense because she lives in London. That's the whole rebuttal. I live here, therefore you're wrong. And when he says she lives a cloistered existence, listen to how fast she reaches for the crime statistics. Nobody disputes that central London is safe for an editor-in-chief. That was never the claim.
Why?
Well, if you have a large and rapidly growing group of people whose beliefs are antithetical to Western beliefs, at some point there will be a reckoning. They will they will try to implement their views, and those who oppose it will oppose it, and that's what you call civil war.
That's the answer she asked for, and he gives it in plain sentences. A large and rapidly growing group whose beliefs are antithetical to Western beliefs. Eventually, they act on them. The people already there push back. That is what he means by civil war in Britain. Now watch her reply. She never touches a single link in that chain. She goes back to travel dates and passport stamps. That is not a rebuttal. That is a change of subject.
And you absolutely do live in a cloistered existence. And if you'd like, we can go on a tour of Britain.
Sure. I'd be very happy to come on a tour of Britain.
And you will see for yourself.
You come see my country that I live in all the time, and you haven't been to a few years ago.
I've been there literally 100 times.
But when was the last time?
Literally a few years ago.
You know why this exercises me? Because you have really shaped opinion about the UK, and so many Americans I come across and I have conversations with, and and I just had one the other day along the order of, oh, London's such a dangerous place. How can you know? There are sort of grooming gangs everywhere. There's violence everywhere. This is a picture that people get from things that you post or that are posted on X. And for example, you're posting for, what was it, 48 hours of Citizen Vigilante. That film, which, paints a dystopian. I've watched it.
Yes.
It was not fun. I watched it yesterday. It's not a very good movie. But it also paints a dystopian picture of Europe, and it glorifies vigilante violence. It glorifies the murdering of a Muslim immigrant family. I honestly think that it is irresponsible for you to put that up on X.
I think that it's a movie, and it's worth watching.
You're clearly suggesting Europe is a dystopian place, and you...
Yes, I mean, why aren't you doing more to fight censorship in Europe? Why aren't you?
He offers to walk her round Britain, and she takes it. Fair enough. Then she spends the next 2 minutes on a film. She watched it. She didn't enjoy it. It still becomes the centerpiece of her case. Meanwhile, he asks the question that actually matters. Why isn't The Economist fighting censorship in Europe? Britain jails people over social media posts. She concedes the point. Then watch where she goes next.
I think that
they put people in prison in the UK for social media posts. Do you think that's appropriate?
No, and we've written editorials against it. But
okay,
I don't
great.
think.
Then
my point is
the sort of thing that I think is bad.
And I think and I agree with you, but I don't think you have to glorify vigilante violence and kind of, post the things that you are doing and paint an entirely inaccurate picture of Europe that you do.
I don't think it is.
We should do a tour of the UK.
Yes, and one of Brussels too.
Because the UK has actually been very good at integrating immigrants. The UK is very effective at doing that. There are problems. I'm the first to admit that there are problems.
Yes, there are major problems.
There are problems, but it really is not what you are describing to or suggesting to your 240 million followers it is.
I think it is.
And I think there's a problem.
No, I think I'm spot on.
We'll have
and that's
to...
why you have freedom of speech, or at least
freedom of speech allows people to say things that are wrong. But your point is not that you're not just saying I have every right to say what I want. You're saying, I am right about Europe, and I really don't think you are.
Well, I think I am.
I think you will find that most people in Europe, or many people in Europe, don't think you're right about it. But let's come to that.
Yes, because the media keeps ignoring reality.
I don't think that's true either.
There's the pattern. Every time he makes a claim about Europe, she answers with her own authority. She lives there. The Economist has written editorials. The UK is very effective at integrating immigrants. Stated, not shown. He says there's a serious problem, and she calls the picture inaccurate. Then she reminds him he has 240 million followers, as if reach is an argument. He doesn't blink. I think I'm spot on, and that's why freedom of speech exists.
And they're programmed by the TV and conventional media.
And why are you... This is, I guess, even to me, sort of the bigger picture question. Why do you focus on this? Why are you interested in it? Because on the one hand, we started this conversation and you described to me this extraordinarily transformative, amazing, civilizational changing stuff that's happening in the next 10 years.
Yes.
And yet you're also... an ongoing participant in the worst kind of tribalism, cesspit of social media. Like, how does that fit? Are you, on the one, they're two very different views of the world.
Yeah, I don't think they're inconsistent.
But why do you do the latter one? the tribalism. I mean, people say that you're a racist. People say that there's all kinds of things said about you, which I'm sure you would disagree with. But I just don't understand. What is the motivation for doing that? Are you fomenting?
My partner is she's half Indian, and and I have 4 children with her. One of them was named after a famous Indian physicist. So I would say I'm not racist. And also, if you look at the people that are employed at my companies, we have senior executives of all races. I don't think there's any racism there.
Look at how the question is built. You're doing amazing things, and also you're a participant in the worst kind of tribalism. People say you're a racist. Not her, of course. People. That's the oldest move in the business, laundering an accusation through an unnamed crowd. He answers it flatly. His partner is half Indian. 4 children, one named after a famous Indian physicist. Senior executives of every race across his companies. And the accusation just evaporates.
Are you anti-Muslim?
I'm against having if people are coming to a country with antithetical views. I am against that. I'm against that. I'm against. I'm against rape and murder. I'm against the imposition of rules and laws that are contrary to what we've come to accept in the West. And I think it's a crying shame that the sort of traditional media, like you, don't recognize this.
Are you anti-Muslim? That's the question, and both available answers are guilty verdicts. He refuses both. He doesn't answer about people. He answers about views, laws, and conduct. He is against arrivals with views antithetical to the host country. He is against rape and murder. He is against imported rules overriding Western law. Notice she never disputes a single one of those. She just moves on.
First of all, I think that you hugely exaggerate the challenges that Europe faces. Secondly, in areas I completely agree with you. I think that the constraints on freedom of speech in the UK in certain areas are problematic. What worries me is that the people you are supporting are really quite vile people in some areas. Like some members of the AFD, Alice Weidel, whom I've met, is a perfectly thoughtful person, but in her party are some real neo-Nazis, are some really, really awful people. And your blanket support of this kind of party with 240 million followers means that you have a power in Europe that I think perhaps you don't realize the scale of impact you have. But you can...
Well, good. I hope I am having a big impact.
But why? Why should you be able to shape European politics? You don't even live there.
I think of it as the sort of the West collectively.
But do you see why this makes people think that this man who has all this power, he's the world's richest man, he thinks he has a right to influence our politics? It makes people... It's why, we started this conversation saying superlatives. It's why people loathe you. I mean, some people do loathe you.
Yes, some people do.
But do you understand why? Do you think what you're doing is helpful for Western democracy?
Maybe some people do loathe me. And that's probably true. I don't care. But the fact that, as you pointed out, 250 million people follow me is that I think a lot more people actually like me than don't. And I think a lot more people hate you and the media more than you realize. Do you realize the media is despised? Do you realize that journalists, the view of journalists is like a favorable view of journalists is like 15%.
I do know that in the United States.
So the shoe is on the other foot. They hate you. They hate you far more than they hate me.
First, she agrees with him on free speech, then hands him a guilt by association charge. Some members of the AFD are awful people, therefore his support is dangerous. Then the real objection arrives. Why should you be able to shape European politics? You don't even live there. She spent 5 minutes saying he doesn't know Britain because he isn't there often enough. Now the problem is that he has influence anyway. And when she tells him people loathe him, he points at the polling on journalists. 15%.
I think there is certainly a loss of trust in journalism. I think in part there have been mistakes by journalists and journalism. I totally acknowledge that. But I also think that the kind of polarized environment, particularly on social media, fostered by the kinds of things you are pushing on X, actually helps this, makes it worse.
I don't think so. I think you're the problem, the media. And speaking of loathing, you're loathed far more than I am, and you don't seem to even realize that.
I think very few people know who I am relative to you, so I don't think I play in the same game.
The media collectively. So, I mean, you're hated. Do you even know that?
To think that I'm aware of my own personal shortcomings and the Economist's shortcomings and our worldview's shortcomings.
Yeah.
But what we stand for, as you know, is liberal values, traditional, classical liberal values, where we worry about concentrations of power and we believe in the individual and the dignity of the individual. And individual freedom.
Right. I agree with that.
Firmly believe that. And I have long thought that you were a classical liberal. But when I read what you post, classical liberal, J.S. Mill, limited government, individual freedom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But when I read what you post on your feed, I sometimes wonder whether you really do believe in that.
I literally said, look, I believe in safe cities, secure borders, and sensible spending with respect to government. That doesn't make me right-wing.
She calls polarization his fault, and he hands it straight back. The media is despised, and she doesn't know the numbers. Then comes the classical liberal lecture. John Stuart Mill, limited government, individual freedom, and the suggestion that he's drifted from it. His answer is the same 3 sentences he started with. Safe cities. Secure borders, sensible spending. Tell the audience which one of those Mill would have objected to. She can't, so she changes the subject to scorecards.
Does the US or do European countries score better on those?
The US is better.
No.
Yes.
Safe cities, much more dangerous in the US than the UK. Sensible spending, bigger deficit here, out of control. You failed to reduce it. Secure borders now under the Trump administration. I agree with you. Before not, but on 2 out of 3, unequivocally, Europe is in a better place. Yet you seem to paint a picture of Europe being a hellhole.
I don't think Europe's a hellhole.
Okay, we can agree on something.
When did I ever say that?
Well, the picture you paint of Europe on X is
you're making up things.
No, I'm not.
You're just literally making it up.
You say civil war in Britain is inevitable, and then you basically proselytize for this citizen vigilante film, which really does paint Europe as a hellhole. It just starts with ominous music, and it says Europe.
Watch this exchange closely. She tells him he paints Europe as a hellhole. He says he doesn't think Europe is a hellhole, and asks when he ever said it. She can't produce the quote because there isn't one. So she reaches for the film again, and for the Civil War line she has already used twice. That's not evidence of a hellhole claim. That's a paraphrase she wrote herself, then asked him to defend.
Well, there was out of control rape and murder.
It's more dangerous in this country than it is in Europe.
Where there is danger in this country is because we failed to incarcerate repeat violent offenders. And that's, the classic sort of Soros DA or judges that fail to incarcerate repeat violent offenders. And if somebody gets arrested 50 times, literally, for violent crimes, and eventually they're going to kill somebody. So you either incarcerate them or people will die.
He concedes the point everyone expects him to dodge. American cities are dangerous. Then he explains why. Repeat violent offenders don't get incarcerated. 50 arrests, and the system keeps handing them the street back. She answers with guns. He answers with a number she clearly hasn't seen. More people die of heat in Europe than die by gun in America. Then he asks why The Economist isn't writing about air conditioning.
I think the prevalence of guns has quite a lot to do with it too. I mean, this is a much more dangerous country. Murder rates are much higher, in large part because there are so many guns.
Well, let me give you an interesting number. There are more people that die in Europe from heat deaths than people that die from gun deaths in America. Why aren't you writing an article about air conditioning?
Well, we've done several on air conditioning, and we had on our cover last week a whole long piece about why
pro air conditioning.
Yeah, we're very pro air conditioning.
Okay, good. Well, good.
Very pro. You should read us. Absolutely.
So, credit's where it's due.
I think you have a view of The Economist that is not entirely accurate. So I will. You come look at England, start reading The Economist, and I will, stand corrected on my criticism of you in this area.
There are many parts of Britain and Europe which are not safe. You can't just walk around.
But there are far more in this country. Far more.
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's go and get my fact checkers to check that.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Credit where it's due, he says, and he means it. That's what someone arguing in good faith sounds like. Then he says parts of Britain and Europe aren't safe to walk. Her answer is that there are more of those in America, which is not a denial, it's a comparison. And when the comparison gets uncomfortable, she calls in the fact-checkers and moves on. The claim was never that America is perfect.
Let's move on from this, because I think I've got a sense of why you're doing what you're doing.
The point is not that the question is not is America perfect? The question is does Europe have a serious and growing problem?
The question
Absolutely,
is
it has a
which
serious
is
and
more
growing
dangerous.
problem.
That's where we started this.
Europe has a serious and growing problem. I'm not going to say that the United States has no problems. Of course it does, but. We should all try to address these issues.
We can agree on that. We should all try to address the problems. My point was simply that I think you exaggerate the scale of Europe's problem, and that
I think people are asleep at the switch and do not realize the magnitude of the issue.
I also think that your interventions, however well-intentioned they may be, risk making Europe's problem a lot worse.
How?
Because you are putting your support behind people who are proto-authoritarians, who are not trying simply to, make sure there is better integration of Muslims or to secure the borders, but who have very clear fascist tendencies, and you will cause huge divisions within Europe.
He resets the question, and it's the cleanest moment of the interview. The question isn't whether America is perfect. The question is whether Europe has a serious and growing problem. She says, he exaggerates the scale. He says people are asleep at the switch. And then, with no evidence offered, come the words proto-authoritarian and fascist tendencies. Total fiction, he calls it. Watch how quickly she retreats to secure borders once the labels stop working.
I think what you're saying is total fiction, and really, I'm simply saying that that Europe has to have secure borders.
Okay, on that we agree.
And should not let in vast numbers of people with views that are antithetical to the accepted views in Europe, and where there will not be some level of safe cultural integration. This is simply common sense.
If all you are saying is Europe should have secure borders, I completely agree with you. Then I have misunderstood what your interventions have been on social media, because that is not what the view I have, not what I would conclude having seen what the people you are supporting and the things you're doing. But if that's your goal, I share your goal that Europe should have secure borders.
Yes.
I think that's perfectly agreeable. That gets me to a question.
And let me explain what the fundamental forcing function here is for why the borders are not secure, which is when you have a welfare state that provides substantial benefits to anyone who comes there, you create a very powerful economic forcing function for anyone who is below that standard of living to come to Europe. It is an obvious, powerful driving force, and people will come there if their standard of living is, from what they get in Europe, is above where they are elsewhere in the world. It's very basic.
I completely agree with that.
Yes,
I don't
it's a very basic incentive structure.
And there it is. Suddenly, if all he's saying is that Europe should have secure borders, She completely agrees with him. That's the same position she called far-right in the first 60 seconds of this interview. Nothing changed, except how calmly he said it. Then he explains the mechanism. A welfare state that pays out to anyone who arrives creates an economic pull no border policy can argue with. She doesn't disagree. She can't.
Conditions, economic influences determine a lot of migration. I think asylum is a separate issue, but I think you're absolutely right. There are pressures for migration. However, there are other things that you haven't focused on, which is migration brings a lot of benefits, and it also particularly does so in a continent like Europe, which is a rapidly aging continent. So we can agree that completely uncontrolled borders are a bad idea. But I think Europe benefits from having immigration, controlled immigration. It brings...
Yes, I'm in favor of immigration. Obviously, I'd be hypocritical if I wasn't, since I'm an immigrant to the United States. I'm in favor of immigration if the person immigrating is going to be a productive member of society, if they're going to be honest, and if they're not going to mistreat people in that country they're going to.
I can agree on all of those.
Yes.
But I think that Europe does better on that than you can.
19 minutes, and count what actually happened. He was called far-right, then fringe, then racist, then anti-Muslim, then a supporter of proto-authoritarians. Not one of those labels survived contact with an actual answer. And by the end, the editor-in-chief of The Economist is agreeing with him on secure borders, agreeing on the incentives created by the welfare state, agreeing that free speech in Britain is under pressure. The disagreement left over is about scale and tone, not about facts. That's what happens when you make someone defend a position instead of a caricature. Do you think Musk exposed a real problem Europe is refusing to look at, or was she right to push back on how he talks about it? Drop your thoughts in the comments.